everyone. Let me start off first by thanking David. We're so privileged to have you here on campus with people, some may be in the audience who knew young Karski. I pass his statue every day. And it's, of course, so wonderful to have you, Madam Speaker, here. I invited Madam Speaker to our centennial celebration of the School of Fine Service, which began with a performance, David's performance of Remember This. So you've now seen it again, and you've lived with this play for some time. I wonder if I could ask you, Madam Speaker, your reaction to it. What speaks to you and your experience as it relates to this play?
Well, first let me thank you, Dean of the Foreign Service Court, Dean Hellman. Thank you for bringing us together. Madam Ambassador Cynthia Schreiber, thank you. And how about Goldman? Oh my. And David, I mean, I've seen him since 2019 when we saw my husband Paul and I, who was is still on the board, but was then chair of the board of the Foreign Service School, and we've been in awe of David since. I mean, just we see him, we see young Karski, whom we knew. Young Karski taught at Georgetown. Paul was in the School of Foreign Service. I met him then, but I was at Trinity College. Paul was at Georgetown. I saw him then. But then I was able to welcome him years later to the Capitol, and Paula as well to the Capitol, so he could present there. You could just imagine all those decades later to have young Karski come to the Capitol was just mystical almost. Yeah. Since I saw you last, David, I've been to Ukraine, been to Poland right after that, just a couple of weeks ago, to the ghetto that doesn't exist anymore, but the big monument there. We put daffodils at the monument. That's the flower that we put at the monument. And then we went to the museum, and just seeing the play now in light of what we just saw a couple of weeks ago, in light of also the man's inhumanity to man that we saw in Ukraine, Russian soldiers doing awful things to 11-year-old girls, to their mothers in front of each other, all of that. You just wonder. So then it takes us all back to young Karski, Secret State, the book I read about every 10 years. We give it away as gifts. Because in addition to all of this, he was a great intellect, a great scholar, a great academician, and somebody we admired. In San Francisco, we have a street named for him. The Jewish community has such admiration for him. I've been with the folks in Chicago as well. So let me just tell you this story. I was born into a political family, Italian-American, Baltimore, Maryland. My father, the Jews and the Italians were close to each other in Baltimore, that's how it was, and happily so. So my father was a Shabbat boy. That meant he like playing on Sabbath because people weren't allowed to work back then. Okay. So he learned Yiddish. And let me try and make this as brief as possible. So he learned Yiddish. So when he ran for office, and he was a great orator. He could turn a booing crowd into a cheering crowd. He was just one of those gifted people. And when he ran for office, he voted for himself the very first time. He was young, 21 years old. State legislature, city council. But then when he ran for Congress, it was around the time of the New Deal. He worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. Worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. Except he had been part of something called the Berkson Group. They had pageants and plays and rallies about what was happening to Jews in German-occupied Europe. And that he would go to these crowds, speaking Yiddish, you can just imagine how that would. So he became one of their sort of stars of the show. Gets elected to Congress, worships at the shrine of Franklin. Just imagine coming from a poor Italian-American neighbor, not poor, we didn't think we were poor, but nonetheless, Italian-American neighbor. And he goes to the floor of the House just a couple of months before the letter you read. March 1943. He'd been in Congress then about 4 years by then. Speaks on the floor of the House, Mr. Speaker, I rise as a member of the Jewish Men's Army, that kind of stuff. And then he talks about the fact that in Europe, this is happening to people just because of what they believe. And I just read, I told Dean I wanted to read it from the card. He says, the Jewish people, they're not just victim of another array of people that fall prey to Hitler's aggression. The Jews have been singled out not to be conquered, but to be exterminated. To them, Hitler has promised death. It is a satanic program beyond the grasp of the decent human mind. This is in his record for Congress. Yet it is being carried out. Already 2 million of the Jews in German-occupied Europe have been murdered. The evidence is in the files of our own State Department. 43. March 43. So people knew, whether they thought the best thing to do was to win the war, and that was the way to solve the problem, but in the meantime, so many were killed. And when you, Jan, talked about the families that you saw, they would take the children first, and people would think, well, maybe they're going to protect the children. But no, they were killing the children because they didn't want the race, in their view, to continue. I saw that in Auschwitz when we were there for the 75th anniversary a couple of years ago. This is just beyond, as my father said, the grasp of the decent human mind. We see some of that happening in Ukraine now. So again, seeing the play in a different way now, having just come a couple of weeks from Ukraine, but every time you see it, you see David take you to you just hear different things along the way. Jan Karski was just a gift, a brave, courageous, values-based, intellectual, academic gift. For the students at Georgetown to have had him for decades as their teacher was something remarkable and a part of the greatness of the Georgetown School of Foreign Service, as was our darling Madeleine Albright, who just left us.
Well, let me ask, following up on what you said about Ukraine and the experience in Ukraine, David, you've been living with this project now for a number of years, developing it, refining it. It still continues to pack, and every time I see it, a deeper and deeper emotional punch. But doing it, even from 2019 to now, and now that we see the unimaginable, a land war in Europe, we're seeing yet again corpses on the street in Bucha, yet again seeing indiscriminate killing of innocent people, yet again seeing millions, 14 million migrants leaving Ukraine to Poland, and Poland welcoming those Ukrainian migrants. But tell me, in your performance of the play, how is the changed circumstances of the moment changing or affecting how you perform the play, or how you see the impact of the play?
First off, before I do that, I just want to acknowledge the extraordinary gratitude that we have. She's been a champion of this project from the get-go, and in many ways, I consider her exemplary of right on the coming on a beautiful Sunday afternoon to sit and share in this when I'm sure there's a couple other things on your table dealing with. But
legislation.
We are immensely grateful and honored to have you with us. The play has, as Joel said, it has things start to emanate from it always in relation to what is happening now. And that what I think is the gift of Jan Karski's, that he will continue to be as relevant to the now and the future if we continue as a race, a civilization, if humanity continues to make the same stumbles upon its own doing, that he will become forever a portal of at least giving students or people moving forward a way to reckon with the questions that are so present today. And it's not just necessarily the Holocaust or Ukraine, although that is incredibly incisive. But a lot of students have been responding to the things that they're wrestling with, climate change and the mis and disinformation cycles and racial inequality and all kinds of things that they are faced with. They respond to the play in a very present way, and that has always been the goal of the play. The intention, the purpose of this play was to give it to his students, as it were, because that's where he made his greatest contribution after his extraordinary attempt to bring the world to awareness. So the play does have, we hear things, I hear things, even when I'm saying them, that they ring more and more bells. Whether you are happy or unhappy, they always ring bells. Anyway, yeah, so it does have presence, and we hope to perpetuate it in whatever form. We do have a film of it that will be hopefully disseminated to film festivals and then to the public and to in curricular applications for students to at least have a handle they can hold on to when they themselves are feeling maybe futile, maybe crushed, maybe inept, or so that's always been the intention of the Laboratory for Performance in Global Politics, and it's never been more obvious than it has been here when we get the responses from the students. There it is.
Thank you, David. Thank you. I want to, before I go to audience questions, and I will, I want to ask Madam Speaker a last question, because it's commencement weekend here on Georgetown, as many of you know. Congratulations on any graduating seniors who are here and families. But the haunting question that opens the play and ends the play, what can we do? So it's commencement weekend. We have students who are out there to change the world. What can we do?
Well, let me just say that they give us hope, the young people who are out there. With their challenges to conscience and to the status quo and the rest. And thank you, Georgetown. How wonderful that Secretary Blinken spoke yesterday. Yeah. I had the honor of speaking about 20 years ago. But it's a great honor to have the Secretary of State at the School of Foreign Service. And what you should know about the School of Foreign Service, this was created over 100 years ago. We talked about the centennial, the year of the play, and that was established before there even was a Foreign Service of the United States. The School of Foreign Service was established. And another point is that I want to read the exact title, the Georgetown Laboratory for Global Performance and Politics, otherwise known as the Lab. Derek Goldman and Cynthia Schneider, once again, thank you for your leadership. Just say, I hope this answers your, this is a response, it may not be an answer. The communication of an idea, of a challenge, of government, of politics, of all of it, through the arts is the most eloquent way. And young people receive a lot of their communication that way. So this laboratory of government and performance of arts and the rest gives me hope. People come together. Listen, how would you have absorbed all of that information except for the creativity and the artistry of David? I mean, it just takes it to you, to the heart. To the heart, heart to heart. And so when people ask me what gives me hope, I always say, well, hope is sitting right there between faith and charity, where it always has been. Faith, hope, and charity. The belief, what he taught us in this presentation, no matter what we may have read in books and the rest, how he struck our hearts was so I was crying the whole time, but in any case, just think, the poet Shelley once said, the greatest force for moral good is creativity. Creativity, you should have imagination to convey. You laugh together, you cry together, you're inspired together, you forget your differences together. And so much of what Dr. Karski said about humanity, human beings creating humanity, not governments, so much a part of that it's all within us. And young people just get their communication differently than, well, not two of you may have, but it is, and I have great hope in the arts, and I have great hope in young people. They know what is at stake in climate, as you mentioned. They know what is at stake. If I just may say one more thing, because I'm going to get to your question. This morning at church at Holy Trinity, Father gave a beautiful, beautiful sermon about there used to be the threat of nuclear weapons, all that in Iraq, and there weren't. But in our country, there is a threat. And one of the threats that, we talk about racism and anti-Semitism and anti-Islamophobia, anti-LGBTQ, all of that. But he said one of the nuclear weapon to all of that is that people feel excluded. The sense of community, the word you used, is just not as strong as it needs to be. But I think young people can abandon some old baggage in all of this and take us to another place. So to those graduates, I always say the two words: be yourself. Whatever your mission is, whatever your passion is, be yourself. The authentic you is what this world needs.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We do have time for just a couple of questions. If there's someone who knew Karski in the audience, you just wait. I see one way in the back.
I want to say something. I graduated from Georgetown in '59, and I attended John Karski's class on communism. I think there are two comments I'd like to make. If you look at his picture, you can see the pain in his face. I think the greatest pain, or one of the greatest pains he had, was not what he suffered, but the fact that people did not believe him at the time. I think there's a lesson to be learned on what happened on January 6th. Many Americans refused to believe what happened in our capital. I think I've said enough.
Yeah, thanks. I got just one last one. Yes, right here.
So young Karski was at my home. His wife, Paula, took my husband's Chinese cooking class. It's a course of 8 classes, and at the very end, there is a banquet to which husbands and other family members are invited. And Jan was there. I opened the door to my home, and there he was, filling the whole space with his tall, lanky Modigliani-like figure. And there was a light around him. I took a step back and just stood there, but his stature was so dignified, and he was such a quiet, understated man. But the whole evening, all of us took in every single word that he said. And years later, I went to his funeral at the St. Thomas Cathedral on Rhode Island Avenue.
St. Matthew.
St. Matthews. And I just randomly sat down, and I was surrounded by people like Brzezinski and others who've been in government, in high government at high levels. And we all sat there and took in the sadness of having lost him. I only knew him, I only had a glimpse of him, but I've never, ever forgotten him.
Well, thank you so much for this comment.
When you said Brzezinski, of course, he was so wonderful. And his son is the ambassador to Poland now. So we went to Poland, as I say, when we left Ukraine, we went to Poland, talked to President Duda. Yeah, they too want the protection of the United States. Poland does, and now still. But Brzezinski, just hearing him sound so much like his father and the rest, I could say to the President of Poland, we have sent you our very best, especially at this time. So that big was that funeral is no surprise.
Well, look, as we close, I'd like to invite Derek Goldman up just so he can take a round of applause. Please, Derek.
And Clark is Clark Young, the co-writer.
Clark. Clark Young. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for being here, David. Thank you, Derek and Clark.
Thank you so much. Please stay connected to this project. This is, of course, so special for us, and it's, a caravan, a pilgrimage. We want to keep going. So there's mailing lists, there's books, there's a film coming out, and we hope to stay in touch about how we can continue to spread the word of Karski. And Madam Speaker, such an honor.
And I know that everyone wants to get together. In response to the the comment about January 6th, it really is connected, what Father said in church this morning about people who feel excluded, with what Dr. Karski was talking about a sense of community. We have to try to find, make the change, not by deepening the division, but by uniting our country in a sense of community.
Here, here.